tonight. We've already done a couple of different itineraries with Lorraine. I don't know if this is the third or fourth one, Lorraine. Quite frankly, I've lost track. I know that Irene is the star of the show. We are going to talk about an itinerary that Alma calls the enticing Douro, the Douro River in Portugal, and a little bit into Spain. And right now, Lorraine is looking at late fall of 2023, only because she's such a group maven. She's got other groups set up for next year. So she's looking at 2023. So there's no rush. We're just looking at the itinerary together. We're having a conversation about it. And here's where we bring our superstar in, our wine host, Irene Tan, for our first tasting of the evening. So over to you, Irene. She's over there. Probably she's doing real work. So
yeah, unfortunately, I got to work while I'm here. So, so the first wine we're doing is a Vinho Verde. If you, well, it's also my latest term is a Porsche pounder for me, because it's such a, it's so synonymous with summer wine. If in Europe, like they have, French whites that are easy sipping, and Vinho Verde is just, when you think of Vinho Verde, you just think of Portuguese white wine, good table wine. The grapes that go on it, and not anyone in particular, there's a whole bunch of different grapes that they grow. Like nobody really thinks very hard about it, but it's something that people will just kind of reach for when the temperature rises above 90 degrees. This is a wine, actually, what I was just thinking, actually, when I go to the tropics in Asia, I will definitely be bringing some of this with me. Easy sipping, inexpensive, typically not $8 to $10, maybe $11 at the most. But it's this particular, I don't know if you guys, any of you got the Bonina. It's very, very acidic, really nice, kind of like a lemony lime nose without the bitterness. But nothing that you would, if you liked Sauvignon Blanc and you couldn't get any of that, this would be a really nice complement to if you didn't have it, because it would go, we were just talking earlier, it would pair really well with anything that's salty. One of the guys that works for me, he loves to cook a lot of stuff, so we were talking about what it would pair with. He goes, I have this Newburgh. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go with your Newburgh. Your Newburgh's going to make this taste like crap. So, but this with definitely with clams or anything that's on the salty side, or salty cheese would work really well. But it's one that's, definitely a Porsche pounder for sure. Have it chilled. So serving temperature for this, I highly recommend about 45 degrees. Once it gets up to like in the mid 50s, it gets to be a little bit flabby. So drink it cold.
Well, wine is super cheap in Portugal. So we would pay $10 or $12 for here. A bottle of it where they grow it, it would be probably €3 or €4 for a nice bottle of Vinho Verde. So
it's like the port is so inexpensive. It's so great.
Look at the destination for a bit, and we'll come back to Irene in a few slides. The Douro Valley. I don't know if anybody has river cruised on the Danube. I know there's a few people that have been on the Danube and the Rhine. This is a very different experience. You're not getting off and going into cities here. When we get outside of Lisbon and we get outside of Porto, you're really in the sticks. For Portugal, you're in these rural areas. You will be visiting these medieval towns, a lot of old castles, a lot of old architecture, but a lot of just vineyards and people's farms, and they call them quintas there. So there's a lot of opportunity here to visit the countryside, to take a lot of meals off of the ship. Our excursions will include meals. Our excursions will include dinner at a wine estate, and do wine tastings and things like that. So a lot of really and just a beautiful backdrop, a lot of different colors, but typically what you see against what you get out of Porto, what you'll see is, this is Porto here, you're sort of leaving the city, and as you go east along the Douro, you're just going to see vineyards, both sides, both banks of the river, as far as the eye can see. So just a really different experience if you've already been someplace else, say in Central Europe or in France or something like that. A lot of daytime cruising, because we want you to see, it's just beautiful. It's just a natural wonder, literally. And we want people to see the Douro River Valley as we're sailing through it. It's not a particularly wide river. It does have quite a few locks on it. And you just have different changing landscapes as you go. This is still on your way as we're leaving Porto. This is the monument to the discoveries. Portugal had a lot of missionaries back in the day that went to South America, that went to Africa. They had a lot of explorers that I think we learned about a couple of them back in school, I'm sure. And this was built in 1940, this particular monument to all of their explorers back in the 16th and 17th and even 18th century. I don't think this was, I think this took a long time to build because I don't think it was unveiled until 1960. We'll fly into Lisbon, the major city, the capital city of Portugal, okay? We'll spend 3 nights, we'll do a tour of Lisbon, and then we'll go to Porto, and then we'll spend a day in Porto, and then we start to head east. Head east along the Douro. And then, again, this is a very rough map, obviously, but you can see the stops along the way: Hegua, Lamego, Pinal, Barca de Alva, Castelo Rodrigo, Salamanca in Spain. So these are the stops along the way. We do offer an optional pre in Lisbon. Okay, this is Porto, the city of Porto, second largest city in Portugal. It's basically a big fishing town, big fishing city. Still looks that way. It's known for having all these, fishing boats there. And then let's see, this is what I know, how I think of Porto, with all of these vibrant colors, different colored buildings, just all pressed together, different shapes, different sizes. Doesn't really make any sense architecturally, right? But it's a working class city. It's a very culturally interesting city. It makes for a very some really nice excursions. And I want to ask Irene to come back now because Porto, port wine is named after Porto, right? So there's a natural affinity there. We schedule several port wine tastings while we're in Porto and while we're in the region of Porto. So this is a good opportunity. I don't know that much about port wine, and I went out and bought the wine today that Irene suggested, the Tawny port, the same brand that she suggested. So I'm excited. I've got a glass here now, and I want her to explain it to me and explain to me how to drink it and what I'm supposed to be tasting and feeling and all those things. So I'll turn it back to Irene now.
Port wines. I'll tell you the little I know about it. It tastes good. But let me show you a few examples. So what you got, if you got what I had suggested, would be the reserve Tawny. Yep. If you didn't, and you didn't want to spend a ton of money, you would have gotten the ruby. So fine ruby. They're mostly made from the same types of grapes, which we feature in our next wine. The Touriga Nacional is one of the main grapes that they basically make the port wine in the Douro region, and then they kind of pack them up and ship them down to Porto to basically age them. So fine ruby is very young. I would say probably about 2 to 4 years, 2 years basically. So it hasn't rested a long time. So you buy it and you drink it and you get it over with. You cook with it if you had to. The reserve would be the next one, and this one's a minimum of 7 years. So if you see a reserve Tawny means it has a little bit of age, and minimum for about 6 years. So that usually results in a much richer wine because it's sat in these barrels for. So they ferment them, they slow ferment them for a while, and then what they do is they throw some grape spirit in it, sort of to kill the yeast and stop the fermentation, and then they basically take what's left of the wine there, and then put it in these what they call port pipes. They're just barrels, basically big barrels, and they let them sit in there for forever, right? And so the question that people always ask is that wines as you know, most whites and reds, when you expose them to air, after a while they just kind of fall apart. Why doesn't this fall apart, right? Because so they've already killed the fermentation and added enough higher proof spirit to it. So usually it's about at least 20 to 22% alcohol, and so it's already oxidized. We already pre-oxidized it for you, so it just now just sits there and gets air and just basically um, gets all the flavors out of the barrel. So very important that the port pipes be made of really good wood, and so which is it's a 10-year Tawny. So the one that the reserve is minimum of 7 years, so they didn't even bother talking about it. So this one's 10 years, so a little bit more money, not a lot more. And grams goes up to like 40 years. It becomes like a $200 bottle. And then you'll see other types of ports out there that are really cool also. There's one called LBV, and that's basically a late bottle vintage. And what that means is all of the grapes came from that year, that same vineyard, and they can wait up to I think a little while. Let me think. No, so actually they bottle it that same year, and then it's made to be consumed pretty quickly. You don't want to wait 20 years to drink this, right? And it's not expensive. It's like a $20 bottle. Um, Last but not least, and the most expensive of all of them, even more so over the age sometimes, is the vintage. Whoa, cameras over here. So it says vintage Porto 2017. So what that means is that that particular year, they decided that, and they have up to 3 years to declare it. So they make this port wine, and they taste it. You know, it's a good excuse to keep drinking it. And then it's like, oh, crap, like, you know, truly a vintage year for that port because the wine is just amazing at that 3 years old. So then they declare it as a vintage year. And what that means for us is we get to pay a lot more money for it. But at the same time, we when it is released, you really get a chance to taste a phenomenal port. I mean, above everything else you've ever tasted, that you know, age-wise or not. That one's only a 2017, and it's only a half bottle, and it's the most expensive bottle right now. It's like $56. So if you do see them out there and they're like, why is a little bottle of port so expensive? Make sure it has a vintage year in it, not LBV. LBV is cheap. Look for a good vintage, and then, you know, buy two, because you're going to open one and you're going to regret it that you don't have a second one later.
Well, let's keep moving here so we can get the next wine. So this is what I was referring to earlier, the azulejo tiles that you'll find throughout Lisbon and throughout Porto and much of Portugal, and even in Spain to some degree. But it's the Portuguese that really became good at this craft back in the 13, 14, 1500s. And it's, you know, it's a blue tile with some metallic materials kind of, you know, melted into it. And it's very prominent now. It's very pretty. And you'll see, if you see these types of photographs, you can guess most times it'll be from Portugal. Okay. Now we leave the area of Porto, and we start up or across the Douro. This is the town of Pinhão, and this is a town that is known for these kind of steeped, manicured vineyards. These you know, vineyard terraces on both banks of the Douro. And this also is a town that's famous. You know, these beautiful manicured vineyards are usually associated with Pinhão. You'll see other similar images as we go down the Douro, but Pinhão is world renowned for just having these beautiful vineyards. And we do an excursion here this day. And when we do this trip, so we didn't really mention it, but if you're new to Alma Waterways, all of your meals are included in the pricing. All of your beer and wine on the ship with your meals included with the pricing. All of your excursions, moreover, all of your excursions are included in the pricing. There's no optionals, there's no upsells or anything like that. So everything is included in your pricing here. So everything I'm showing you here is part of the program. This is Plaza Mayor in Salamanca. This is the day that we journey into Spain for a day. This is the main shopping area in Salamanca. It's very pretty. It's very busy. This is a fairly large city in the western part of Spain. We take in, on this day, the excursion is to take in, one of the excursions is to take in a flamenco dance. Lovely, colorful, fun, energetic, kind of sexy even. Just, I love the flamenco dancing. It's obviously it's something that is synonymous with Spain and some other parts of the world too, in South America. But this is a fun time. And then I mentioned earlier that we, unlike what we're doing in Central Europe and in France, the Douro is meant to come off the ship, meet the locals, go to the farms, go to the quintas. On this particular day, you're at a quinta in Aveleda, and you're drinking the white wine there. And it's a great experience. You spend the entire afternoon here, evening here, eating, drinking, meeting the family who owns the wine estate. And I think this was the opportunity here to get Irene back. And I think, Irene, we're going to do a red now, if I'm not mistaken, even though we're pouring a white here in the image. So
Yeah. So actually, I think corrected. There is 10% of port wines that we rarely see here, which is why I've never seen them here. You can get white port wines that are aged in barrels, and they can be up to $300 a bottle. But it's like sort of the cream of the crop for them. Most times, if you do see them, they're the inexpensive ones that people just drink. Not common that they do age them to 30, 40 years, but it's a very top 10% of the wines that produce in port. So sorry about that misinformation. As far as grapes, there's about six different grapes for the white port. We'll go to the next red wine. So this one is the camera's over here. I don't know what you guys call for Douro Red. This one is Custom Superior Douro DOC. So it's but comes from a region, so it has a little bit more importance. Typically, there's maybe a blend of 3 or 4 different red grapes that they would make this red wine with. It's kind of not well known because people always think of the inexpensive red Portuguese wines, inexpensive Portuguese white wines, but this one is actually a pretty powerful wine. The main grape in it, I think it's more than 50% of it. If you got the same one, it's Touriga Nacional. That's one of the very durable, thick-skinned grapes. It's kind of, think of it as almost like a Cabernet, but in the old world style for them. And the other major grape that's in there is a Touriga. I think it's not Blanca. I have to remember to pronounce it. But the most of the Douro Reds are Touriga Nacional, and then they add a couple of little grapes just to give it a little kind of balance it off a little bit. Very powerful, earthy on the nose, but then also if you have a similar Douro Red, just color-wise at a distance, you're gonna go, that looks like it could be a younger Cabernet. Nice deep ruby colors, and on the nose for me, I mean right off the bat, I can tell it's an old world wine. It doesn't have that big fruitiness, but yet after this opened a little while, I opened this one at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. So it's got the fruit is definitely coming through nicely. So the black currant, black cherry type notes you should get, and just a little hint of floral. Not quite sure which flower yet. And I'll taste it again. Wow, it's really bold wine. It's got really good tannins on it. Definitely on the dry side. Kind of makes your mouth kind of pucker after. Acidity wise, it would be medium to on the higher side, meaning this is gonna make you want to eat more food when you have it. As far as pairing, I would say beef, venison, lamb would be my top choices for this wine because it definitely will hold up to it. Wouldn't have it with a fish unless it's a really, really rich fish. But even then, I think it definitely is a meaty wine that should go with a meat. If you're vegetarian, that would be a tough one. I'm not sure. I'll have to come back to you on that one.
So let's finish up then. We just have a few more slides. Again, everything we do here and everywhere we are, we try to be authentic. We're trying to meet with the locals, utilize local businesses and things of that nature. And on this particular day, we have lunch at Aquinta in Avessada, and you have a local folk band. And Portuguese music is not that much different than music from, you know, Hungarian music or Romanian music with the accordions and the drums and things like that. So we'll have a local band come and you'll do some wine tasting again. Again, you can't go anywhere along the Douro and they're not vineyards. It's not possible, right? So great food. But again, I want to just stress how this is the antithesis of what one of our Rhine itineraries would be, or Danube itineraries, or Seine itineraries, not better or worse, just different and unique. So a lot of outdoor activities. And also think about this, Portugal is much further south than some of the other parts of Europe that we do. So we go well into October, November, and you still have very warm weathers. I mean, basically in October, you're going to get 70s, still getting 70s in the daytime. In November, the first couple of weeks of November, still 60s, high 60s in the daytime. So very pleasant weather and just great for doing things outdoors and meeting locals. And then I'll show you, I didn't show you much of Lisboa as it's said in Portuguese. Lisbon, the capital city. I think probably about almost 3 million people live in Lisbon these days. And there's a lot of interesting things to do in and outside of Lisbon, museums, art, culture, food, great architecture. Also have some of the local. Now I'm in southern Massachusetts, so I'm not that far from the communities of New Bedford and Fall River, where there are lots of Azorean and Portuguese, stemming from the fishing, communities. So codfish would be something very local to me, near and dear to me. My wife has some aunts that regularly bring codfish to barbecues and things like that, even in the summertime. So I am familiar with this, but codfish is a staple of the diet. It represents something that their fishing fleets would go off in the 16th century and be away for months at a time. And they're credited with being the first, they would salt the cod and keep it for months, to keep it fresh for months that way. And that's why all, Portuguese people would be familiar with codfish and eat it in some form or another. And then again, I love the colors. You sort of know you're in Portugal with the yellows and the greens and the red doors and things like that you wouldn't necessarily see in other parts of Europe. So, and again, with the tiles, some of these homes are tiled, some are not. And they're not all brand new. And it's, Lisbon is not, it's not Paris, okay? It's not Rome, but it's really interesting and it's very unique. And the architecture is very unique to Portugal. Cintra is a visit just outside of Lisbon. This is one of our day trip excursions. This is the Royal Palace at Cintra, where until I think the 18th century, the royal family of Portugal lived here. It's kept very nicely. It's set real high up on a cliff, on a hill, and just a beautiful visit. Even just the drive to this part of the countryside is really nice. The seaside is really interesting. So Cintra is a really nice visit. And then we'll bring back to some more food. We've done a lot of wine. So these are also something I'm very familiar with. These are like egg custard tarts, pastéis de nata. And
those are the best. They are the best.
You took the words out of my mouth, Don. I mean, I grabbed a bite before this started, but I haven't had dessert, so I don't have any of these in my house. But now I have to find something, ice cream or something, because these are so rich and these are so good. You can go into Boston and get these anywhere. You can go into Providence, East Providence. I don't know about Connecticut if Connecticut has any Portuguese American populations, but I know that in Rhode Island and in Boston and places near me, these are very common. And they are pretty much, everyone will tell you these are great. They're just really great. Not for if you're a calorie counter, but they're just really good. Cinnamon and egg and whipped egg and just in like a pastry, right? So just wonderful. And you'll find these everywhere pretty much along the way. Plus, we make them fresh on the ship. Everything on the ship, by the way, I didn't mention this. We source everything locally on the ship. So nothing on our ship or any of our ships is ever frozen. We get all of our foodstuffs locally. You'll actually see the bakery trucks and different things coming and giving us ingredients and bringing local supplies. And then everything is baked fresh. Everything is made fresh. There's no reason to freeze anything, right? So this is something you can have on the ship or off the ship while you're when you're out and about.
And
I
there's no calories on vacation. That doesn't happen.
No, I mean, you listen, you go away and, we do on the ship, we have a wellness person or a fitness instructor on the ship. We have a fitness room. We've got, we do yoga on the sun deck every morning. We do Pilates in the afternoons if you want, right? But yeah, there's no guilt on these trips. It's just about, let's go. You do a lot of walking. You do a lot of, this is my mother used to tell me, just walk it off, Steve, walk it off, right? So we get off the ship every day and there's opportunities to burn some calories that way. So you feel a little less guilty, but the food is great. The wine is great. I think that we have a tendency here to think French wines first, Italian wines, and other wines in the world, South African wines, Argentine, wines from Mendoza, whatever. But the Portuguese have some really nice wines, and they have some real drinkable wines, and they have some really nice fine wines as well. So, we don't need to be necessarily wine snobs when we go here, because we'll find plenty of good wines, very drinkable. I certainly don't know as much as Irene does, but I know what tastes good in my mouth, so to speak. And Irene, I do always appreciate, I look forward to you steering us in the right direction. I did buy the 10-year port that you had on your list there, and I like all of your suggestions. So that's the experience. And again, for me, because I've been doing it for many years, I want people to have the right expectation in that they understand that, you go on the Danube, you're visiting some really small medieval towns, but also some big cities like, Vienna and Budapest and Munich sometimes and things like that. Amsterdam on the Rhine and Cologne on the Rhine. Here, not so much. It's Lisbon is the big city and Porto is a fairly big city, but along the Douro, it's very quiet. It's very picturesque. It's beautiful. It's naturally beautiful. And then the visits many of the meals are off the ship, so which is quite a divergence from how we do it, how we would do it on some of the more popular, more densely visited rivers, the Danube and the Rhine. So everyone understands, right? So it's just a different, again, not better or worse, just different. And I told Lorraine I was going to speak some Portuguese tonight, but I completely forgot. So desculpa, meu, por favor. I'll say.
Obrigado.
Muito obrigado. De nada, amiga. So I hope that you enjoyed our evening. And if you have further questions or ideas, Lorraine is the person to go to, because we're not limited here. If there's something that in our series of, virtual discovery we haven't touched upon yet, this is another destination you want to, we have 35 itineraries. We do Africa, we do the Nile River, we do the Mekong River in Southeast Asia. We can talk about these things too, or if there's something you want to do a deeper dive in Central Europe, we can certainly do that. But Lorraine is your go-to person.
Let me know. I'm always looking for different presentations and hearing what people are interested in seeing and learning about. So Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate everybody coming and hanging in there with us.